to Friday. We've lasted the whole week. Today's a little special. We're going to do a drink, but before we do, I'm going to talk a little bit about Maker's Mark, and it's a bourbon from Kentucky. I went through the tour, and I didn't realize I did this like 4 years ago. Going through the tour is so fascinating. They do all these different tours. Right now they don't, but when they come back, they'll be doing the tours. And when they do, take the long tour. You get to see so much more, and there's only like 5 of you instead of 50 of you for 5 minutes. So it's about a 3-hour tour, I think, maybe 2. But you go into a lot of the buildings and you see all the barrel rooms and stuff. But because you aren't there today, I made a movie back then. So why don't we let you see the movie, and then we'll come back and we'll be making the old fashioned, and then we'll be doing bread pudding. See you in a minute. Welcome to the Maker's Mark Distillery in Kentucky on the Bourbon Trail. This is one of the many buildings on the property, and notice the shutters are the same color as the bottles. And this is the 1935 printing press that still prints every single label for every bottle. Here is one of the many barrel rooms. Each barrel weighs 525 pounds. They're rotated by hand for about 3 Kentucky summers, which equals 6 years. Here's the automatic washing machine for the bottles before they're filled. And here's the automatic filling of the bottles. And after they're capped, they go down the conveyor belt towards the dipping process. Labels are already put on, and the dippers work about 20 minutes each before they take a break. They dip, swirl into 350 degree Fahrenheit red wax. They do each other bottle, while the next dipper on the line does the other bottle. And there's the bottles going to the packing department and the boxing department. If you find yourself in Kentucky, check out the website, because they do have a lot of different tours and tastings that are really a great time. Take care. Just this week, Maker's Mark has created personal labels for every occasion. Go ahead and go to their website and find out more information, and they'll send you free labels for your bottles. Okay, we're going to make the old-fashioned. You saw the barrel room, and if you go to the barrel room, you can become a member of their heritage thing for free. They send you a lot of stuff, and you get your name on one of the barrels. It takes about 8 years for the barrel to mature, so I think I've got 3 or 4 more years left until, and then you're allowed to buy alcohol out of that, and they kind of mark it differently. But here's cast strength. It's a little stronger, and you only can get this at the I wanted to call it a winery, but over at the, what would you call it?
Distillery?
Distillery, thank you. We're in California and we have a lot of wineries. Then we've got the 46, and this you can buy everywhere. But when you go on the long extended tour, you get to go to the 46 room, which it's the whole ceiling is Cholula. If you've never heard of Cholula glass, it's like the Bellagio in Las Vegas. And then this one was an anniversary bottle. I haven't opened it yet, and all of the founder and the chairman and everybody, they signed it and they dipped it differently. So they do dip in different waxes during different seasons. Normally it's always red, but if there's a football conference or something like that, they'll do special bottles for that. But these you can't buy a mail order, you have to go. So that's one reason why you need to go. So anyway, number one thing is always an old fashioned. And old fashions can be made so many different ways, but this is the way they make it. You take an old fashioned glass with an ice cube, not an ice cube, a sugar cube, or a little bit of sugar on the bottom with a little bit of water. Now if you do a sugar cube, you can do that. But sugar cubes aren't the easiest things to find all the time. Then we've got orange, and you want to do this over the glass so the essence of the orange gets all over the glass because it sprays it out. And if you can, get one big piece and rub it on the edge and throw it down there. So do it on both. And then, this one did it. Okay, we're back making our bread pudding. I hope you liked the tour of the factory and the drink that we made. And we're gonna do a whiskey sauce or a bourbon sauce with this also. I was at Marriott Hotels for years in the early 80s. That was one of my first longest pastry jobs in Anaheim. And we used to make bread pudding. It was on the menu all the time. But it always tasted different because what we did was, let's say we had the buffet and we had all the croissants and all the danishes and everything. Whatever wasn't so given that day, nothing in bread baskets. But if anything was on the line that was left and day old, we'd put it into big bags and throw it in the freezer. And then once every couple weeks, we would make bread pudding, a big massive amount. So this recipe is not that one because I don't have all the old croissants. But we're going to use some egg bread and some whole wheat bread today, and we'll get to that in a minute. But we are going to use Maker's Mark, and we've got heavy cream, and we've got milk. Now, what's interesting about heavy cream and milk, cooking it like this, back in the day, people would say, until scalding. And people didn't know what scalding meant. So a lot of the magazines started putting until it bubbles around the edges and gets a skim on the top. So I just say scalding. So we've got bread, we've got sugar, we've got some egg yolks, and we've got pecans, cinnamon, nutmeg, and some salt, and melted butter. So first we're gonna take, let me get some room here and show you the bread. This is day old. It's been sitting out. It's got a little dryness to it. I just cubed it up, and after I cube it, and sometimes the bread doesn't want to, then I'll just put it into a 9x13" pan, and you can add all sorts of different things to this. You can do breads, but you can also, instead of the pecans, you can switch it out and use chocolate chips. If you use raisins or currants, you want to make sure they're underneath the bread, because if they aren't and they're on top and they bake, they'll turn into little BBs and crunchiness, and they aren't very good and they burn. So you overfill. Okay, so all of our bread is all in here, and I'm going to take pecans and put it in, but I'm going to put them underneath the bread and toss them. Try not to put them all on top, because sometimes the nuts will also get too brown. Kind of hide it and press it down. Okay, that's scalding, so I'm going to stop it. Meanwhile, I've got my eggs and sugar. Yeah, break those eggs up. Add the sugar. We want that to blend it up really nice. Now, the eggs were room temperature. I don't want to take hot milk and put it into this. If I do that, you just want to take a little bit while it's just like this, or your eggs will become scrambled. But the eggs do have the sugar in it too. So let's go back, blend. So this is our custard, almost like we did on Monday when we did all the ice cream. But this is done at a different temperature and different way. But there it is. So now we're going to take, and I technically, we'll add our butter, cinnamon, nutmeg, and salt in here. Then we're going to pour it over our bread. And when we do this, we want it to kind of soak. So, I'm going to pour it all over. Try not to spill. And this will create a custard in between the bread pieces. And this goes in the oven for about 35 minutes, I believe, at 125. Now, once I get all that milk in there, I'm gonna press it down, and you'll see pieces of soggy bread and little lakes in between the soggy bread. And just like that. And then we will put this in the oven, and we'll be back to make our whiskey sauce. Okay, we gotta make whiskey sauce. And when we used to make this type of sauce at Marriott, I had to go get a bottle of whiskey, and they gave us the cheapest stuff all the time. They said, oh, you're cooking with it, you don't need the good stuff. Well, I realize if you're buying the whiskey, and I don't work for Maker's Mark, it's just what I like. You're only using a half a cup. What are you gonna do with the rest of it? You're gonna drink it, so you might as well get the good stuff, right? Years ago, I was at an event where somebody made whiskey sauce with a old bottle of whiskey that was like 100 years old, and he was so proud of it. Now that's a waste. You don't know what in the world the difference when you cook with it that way. So, what we have is we have unsalted butter, and we have brown sugar. We're gonna put that together after the butter melts. And it's a very simple sauce, and it separates also, so you need to mix it up a little bit when you're going to use it. Then we have dark corn syrup, because we want this to have a dark look to it. And the whiskey and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So the vanilla enhances a little bit. And I'm just using the regular Maker's Mark, none of the special varieties that I have over there that I talked about. But we will blend this up. All right, after you've got everything incorporated, you might use a whisk because it does separate. The butter looks like it separates. Go ahead and turn the heat off and add your liqueur to it. And stir that in, and I'm going to pour this in so you can kind of see what it looks like, which it will have a runniness to it, but it thickens as it sits in the fridge, and you can go ahead and put it in the fridge. You'll want to serve that hot on your bread pudding. So we'll be right back in just a few minutes with the bread pudding and show you how it looks all together. Okay, our bread pudding came out of the oven. I let it sit for a few minutes because you don't want to take it right out of the oven and start cutting it. So we'll cut a piece out, and then we're going to put our, oh, that looks good. How to test this is just take a flat knife and go in the center and come out when it starts to go. And if it's wet, it's kind of like a pumpkin pie. Then you know you have to do a little bit more. So anyway, here's our bourbon sauce. And if you want, decorate it with a little powdered sugar. And there you go. So here is your bread pudding. And it's got a kick to it because we've got that Maker's Mark in it. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us all week. It's been a long week, and we hope we have a great weekend. Stay safe. Watch out for your neighbors. Thanks, Neil. And we'll see you guys next Monday for a whole new set of shows. Take care and have a great day. Bye.